right, so we're going to be doing a task force report from the Metadata Application Profile task force. It's a lot of the same words twice there. So to start off with, we wanted to acknowledge our members. We have a task force of 13 folks who represent about half of the institutions in the member network, so that's really great. We started forming up last year in late July and early August following the last annual meeting. And we wanted to just thank everybody for their hard work so far. We've had a lot of meetings over a lot of time, and so far I've actually done quite a bit of work, even though sometimes it may not seem like it. So what have we been up to? Shortly after we convened, the task force elected to conduct a survey about the metadata application profile, our current profile, to gather data to begin to guide our work. So the survey design and IRB process took up most of the fall of 2018. We needed to do IRB both through University of Utah and through Utah State University, since we were using their Qualtrics, and both Liz and I were co-chairs, so we had to do it through both institutions. And then we were able to launch our survey in early January. So we let it run for about 6 weeks, and following the closure of the survey in early February, we went through a period of preliminary analysis and discussion that led to testing a variety of tools to host our newly revised platform, profile. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the end. So looking forwards, once we have the map revised and finalized, we are looking forward to sharing it with the community, of course, and with the digital library community more broadly. So we're planning on working on a process for regular updates and enhancements, because it's been about 8 or 9 years since the last revision was done, and we don't want to have that happen again. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Liz, who is going to talk about the survey results and process in a little bit more detail.
All right, thanks, Teresa. Okay, so the survey that the task force developed had 16 questions that looked at 5 key areas, which were current practices, pain points, barriers to harvesting, reuse of metadata, and general feedback. And we were actually really excited. We got 12 institutional responses out of the 17 that we sent it out to, so that was a 71% response rate, so yay. All right, so just quickly looking at what we actually learned from this whole thing. The current practices are still that most of the institutional hubs are using Dublin Core, but we do have some that are also using MetsMods. Additionally, we have people that are really heavily started using EAD and also MARC for additional metadata, so we need to take that into account. And that's our graph at the top, and the graphs get worse at the bottom. It's even harder to read, but let me tell you what that one says. So what we wanted to know was how important each current field was to the metadata creator at that institution. And we took this from the previous application profile, and what we found is that fields title, date, description, and creator were really important, but that the least important were the table of contents, the alternative titles, and the abstracts. So that will feed into things that we either lower down in requirements or maybe take out, depending on how that falls out. So along those lines, some of the things that the hubs found the most difficult about this were that they found that some fields were unnecessary, like our table of contents field. And then the most common, but the next most popular answer for this was actually that people were just fine with everything. So that's the second from the bottom one right there. But then other issues were redundancy or difficulty with some controlled vocabularies. Next up, the barriers to harvesting. So we asked which metadata fields routinely prevent or cause problems with getting your collections harvested, and most respondents reported that they didn't have any problems fields, but if they did, it was usually date, description, and subject. So we'll be analyzing those to see what the root causes are for those and see if that's something we can address, such as making it some fields recommended instead of required. Next, we also looked at the reuse of metadata, and this was one of the most interesting questions we had, and this came from our bulk digitization group that you reported last time. So what we want to know if hubs were pulling metadata from other sources, and if so, what those sources were. and 91% of institutions are pulling it from other places. Surprise, surprise, not really, but so, and most likely places were from finding aids and inventories, as well as the MARC records from a catalog. So this information will help shape how the task force deals with these fields and maybe how we require that those fields to be structured. Last but not least, we also asked for just general feedback about the profile and what we could do to improve it. For the most part, responses were really positive, noting that the profile really was working well so far for people, but there are some really good things we could do to change it. One of the biggest things was the rightstatements.org and getting that standardized, as well as doing mappings for METS mods and EAD. And so I think that's it. We were just really appreciative of the time the task force spent to create and analyze that survey. And then I'll tell you, Teresa will tell you how we're going to implement that.
All right. So up until now, we've had a static document for our application profile, but as we were starting to talk about doing the revisions, of course, one of the things that came up was how are we going to host and share this newly revised map with the community. And what we found looking at other institutions, of course, is that many institutions have their documents hosted online and are more of a living document. So once our survey was completed in April, we began a platform evaluation phase. And we chose 5 platforms to evaluate, those being Google Docs, Confluence, GitHub, SlimWiki, which was a random choice, and our own WordPress site. And so we, a small sub-team, mocked up one element from the previous profile, that being date, chosen because it was very verbose and had a lot of pieces to it, from our current map. And we did a comparison across those, where we did an open meeting and sort of presented each of them, did a recording of it for those who couldn't make it, and then had people vote on it. So we wanted to evaluate the platforms on their respective prices, whether they were openly accessible, say on the web for viewing, whether they supported collaboration, the ability to do exports in multiple formats, such as PDF or Word, the ability to do quick real-time updates, whether they could accept comments as people were looking at it, and then again, accessibility. So after the voting was over, I probably spoiled things here, GitHub was our winner. And this is a mock-up of the draft of the current map that Liz and I had just completed in the last week in GitHub Wiki. So also big thanks to Liz for finding this. This was her test, and it blew everyone else out of the water, honestly. This was a template from University of British Columbia. Yeah, for their format here. And actually, Anna Nitra liked it so well when she saw it that she converted the Marriott Library's metadata dictionary to this template immediately afterwards. So I think that speaks to its usability and its simplicity, really. So this is showing the new homepage of what it's going to look like. The list of elements, which again is the current list, is listed on the middle, but then there's also this nice sidebar that persists across the different pages, so you can navigate around it a lot more easily. And so then this second slide about the platform is just showing how an individual element language looks. And so far, my comments are just that GitHub has been really easy to work with, and we're looking forward to doing the redrafting process. So where do we go from here? Of course, we're going to be working on incorporating our survey feedback and redrafting the map. We're going to be meeting iteratively in the next probably couple months to do that. Our next meeting is actually scheduled for next Tuesday, the 11th. So once we have version 3.0 of the map ready to go, of course, we're going to publish it via GitHub. And then embark on a campaign, I guess, to promote and socialize it throughout the network of Mount West. And that could include things like webinars to talk about the changes that have been made. Another approach that I've seen is to use lightning rounds at different conferences. So we might develop, say, a couple of quick slides if people who are on the task force want to talk about their work going forwards, and then possibly publication or other more major presentations about the process as we go on. And from there, hopefully more happy metadataing for those of us who care about it. So Alex and I, and not Jamie. All right, well, that's it from us. So thank you, everybody, and yeah, thanks.